This is TomoNews for Thursday, June 22nd.
Orca whales harassing fishing boats for their catches. Fishermen out in Alaska are dealing with a new threat to their fishing hauls in the form of killer whales. Recently, the pods of predators have been observed targeting individual boats, even waiting hours for the fish to pile up. Once the fishermen are ready to call it quits, that's when tens of orcas swim in to swipe the catch. A fisherman interviewed by the National Post likened the shakedown to the methods of a biker gang. The fishermen who've been victimized by this thuggery say not only do they get stalked by the whales, they sometimes get chased back to port. Using electronic noisemakers was one disruption technique designed to shoo them away, but the orcas now hear it as a dinner bell. The fishermen also report they've seen more juvenile whales, which could mean the young ones are being taught how to go gangster at an early age. The increased incidence of whale thieving in the area is being attributed to populations rebounding, following a moratorium on commercial whaling in the 1990s. That and killer whales are socially advanced creatures as well as expert hunters, known to invent their own hunting strategies and share useful information amongst their pods. While there are no reports of wild orca whales killing humans, that doesn't mean they're opposed to roughing you up.
Dog meat sold to tourists in Bali. A shocking report from Australian broadcaster ABC has revealed dogs are being killed for their meat and passed off to unsuspecting foreign tourists as street snacks on the Indonesian holiday island of Bali. Undercover animal rights activists from Australia provided the ABC with disturbing video. Animals Australia uncovered local villagers catching mostly stray dogs and selling them to unscrupulous dealers who trade in RW, a code term for dog meat. Dealers are paying villagers up to 100,000 rupiah, or about $8 for a healthy adult. The dogs are horribly mistreated. First caught in wire nooses, they have their muzzles tied with rope and are hanged by their legs or necks before being beaten to death. Distressing video aired by the ABC also shows one dog catcher using a rifle to shoot a stray, resting just meters away. Although the sale and consumption of dog meat is legal in Indonesia, the country has laws against the abuse of animals that can result in prison terms of up to 9 months. Many of the routine practices recorded by Animals Australia are illegal, but the law is poorly enforced. Freelance catchers are also using food scraps laced with cheap and widely available cyanide to kill dogs. Traces of the toxin remains in the animal's meat, which very likely poses a danger to humans. Disturbingly, beach vendors have been recorded selling dog meat on sticks to locals and visitors alike. And not everyone knows what they're buying. Demand is strong, however. The Bali Animal Welfare Association estimates around 70,000 dogs are killed on the island for meat every year. The organization says it's documented some 70 restaurants in Bali selling dog meat, mostly in rural areas and mostly to other Indonesians. Yet the Animals Australia investigation aired by the ABC clearly shows dog meat sellers deliberately misleading tourists into buying and eating the meat. If the cruelty inflicted on man's best friend doesn't motivate authorities on Bali to stamp out this ugly trade, perhaps the risk to the tourist economy will. It's not yet time to boycott Bali, but think long and hard before you go for that cheap and tasty street meat skewer. You might just be munching on that stray you saw last night. You might want to lay off the coconut oil. Health food enthusiasts and hipsters have long sworn by the many benefits of coconut oil. But according to the American Heart Association, it may not actually be all that good for you. Coconut oil, unlike most plant oils, is highly saturated. Its saturated fat content is 82%, higher than butter, beef fat, and pork lard. Saturated fat has been linked to low-density lipoprotein, which is bad cholesterol that can build up in the arteries and increase the risk of heart disease. The American Heart Association recommends eating less saturated fat, replacing them instead with unsaturated plant oils, nuts, and seeds. Still, coconut oil has been known to raise good cholesterol levels. And while the evidence doesn't say increased consumption leads directly to heart disease, the fact remains that it contains plenty of saturated fat. So as with all things, it may best be taken in moderation. Frank Sachs was the lead author of the report debunking the idea that coconut oil is a health food. While speaking to USA Today, his advice was, you can put it on your body, but don't put it in your body. Endless energy with one coat of paint. Researchers from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology have invented a novel new paint that can turn surfaces into a hydrogen power generator. Synthetic molybdenum sulfide is a newly developed compound that absorbs moisture and accelerates the splitting of water molecules. When mixed with titanium oxide in paint, the resulting substance is able to produce hydrogen energy from sunlight and water vapor. Hydrogen is one of the cleanest sources of energy and can be used to power vehicles and equipment. The solar paint can generate hydrogen energy in remote locations or hot and dry climates, so long as there is sunlight and moisture in the air. Researchers believe it will take at least 5 years to come up with the final product, but they're confident that it will be cheap and accessible. Stabbing at Michigan airport appears to be a terrorist act. On Wednesday morning, a police officer was stabbed at Bishop Airport in Flint, Michigan. The FBI is investigating if anyone else was involved, but currently view the assailant as a lone wolf attacker. Bishop Airport police officer Lieutenant Jeff Neville was at his post at the top of the escalators when he was attacked from behind. The suspect reportedly shouted "Allahu Akbar" before stabbing the officer in the neck. Authorities say the suspect is from Quebec and holds a Canadian passport. The wounded officer was in stable condition after undergoing surgery. CNN reported a U.S. official as saying that based on preliminary information, the 50-year-old assailant had traveled between the U.S. and Canada multiple times. How does sickle cell disease kill a person? Prodigy, one half of the rap and hip-hop duo Mobb, died Tuesday in Las Vegas at the age of 42 after being hospitalized for complications related to sickle cell anemia. Mobb is widely considered to be one of the most successful acts of all time, having released 8 albums between 1993 and 2014. Prodigy, born Albert Johnson, had suffered from sickle cell anemia since birth. Sickle cell disease is a group of inherited red blood cell disorders. 2 hemoglobin S genes need to be inherited, one from each parent, in order to trigger sickle cell disease. If both parents have the sickle cell trait, a child has a 50% chance of also inheriting the sickle cell trait, a 25% chance of being disease-free, as well as a 25% chance of inheriting the sickle cell disease. Hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen in red blood cells. Red blood cells that contain normal hemoglobin are disc-shaped, whereas sickle cell hemoglobin form long and inflexible chains. Normal red blood cells are flexible and can pass through both large and small blood vessels. Sickled red blood cells can stick to vessel walls, which can cause a blockage that stops oxygen delivery. Normal red blood cells can live up to 120 days. When the number of red blood cells decreases, the kidneys release erythropoietin hormones that stimulate bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. Sickled blood cells can only last up to 20 days due to their inflexible nature. The body of someone suffering from the condition often can't keep up with the fast pace of decreasing red blood cells, thus causing the person to suffer anemia. Anemia causes various organ damage over time, affecting the brain, heart, spleen, lungs, and kidneys, as well as the skin and bones. According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, most people with sickle cell disease are of African ancestry. About 1 in 13 African American babies is born with the sickle cell trait, and 1 in 365 black children is born with sickle cell disease.
160 pilot whales and dolphins slaughtered in the Faroe Islands. This time of year, along the bays of the Faroe Islands, the water runs red. The annual whale and dolphin hunt takes place between June and September, in a tradition that's been going on since the 16th century, possibly even earlier. During the hunt, Faroese fishermen spot the pods of cetaceans and form a semicircle around them with their boats. They then drive the animals to shore by banging against their boats, trapping them with assaulting walls of sound. Once the animals begin to beach themselves, the fishermen come out with hooks and ropes to drag their live bodies to shore. They then use their spinal lances to sever the spinal cords of the creatures, watching as they bleed to death. Sea Shepherd reports more than 160 pilot whales and white-sided dolphins have been slaughtered at this year's hunt already. The carcasses will be cut up and distributed amongst villagers for meat. Consuming the meat has been known to cause toxic mercury poisoning in humans. Faroese officials insist the hunt is conducted in accordance with international law and is sustainable and fully regulated by national laws. The Faroe Islands being an independent nation within the Kingdom of Denmark, animal activists are calling on Danish officials to help end this barbaric practice. Under the European Union's Habitats Directive, members of the EU are prohibited from participating in all forms of deliberate disturbance, capture, and killing of cetaceans.
Tanning drug could prevent skin cancer. Scientists have developed a drug that can tan human skin without the harmful effects of ultraviolet radiation. In tests on skin samples and mice, researchers found a way to trick the skin into producing melanin. Ultraviolet light causes the skin to tan by damaging it. This starts a chain of chemical reactions in the epidermis that eventually leads to the production of dark melanin, the body's natural sunblock. Researchers have developed a drug that, when applied to the skin, triggers the process of producing melanin without the need for UV light. Tests of the drug were conducted on mice before they were experimented on samples of human skin. Even without exposure to UV rays, the human skin cells darkened as they would when exposed to sunlight. The study also showed melanin produced from being triggered by the drug was able to block harmful UV rays. The drug still needs to go through more safety testing and is not yet ready for commercial use. Researchers eventually hope to combine their drug with sunscreen to provide maximum protection from the sun.